That was G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Now, the G20 Agriculture Working Group under South Africa's 2025 presidency says international trade is key in addressing food insecurity. Addressing the Agriculture Working Group, South Africa's Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, sounded an alarm about the continued threats against the stability of global food systems due to climate volatility. The members of the working group called on international development banks to play an important role in mobilizing resources and increasing and improving the quality of investments towards more sustainable and productive agricultural models. For more on this, we joined on the line by the Deputy Director General for Economic Development, Trade and Marketing of the Department of Agriculture, Kwena Komape. We've heard the Minister Steenhuisen calling for an inclusive market participation, ensuring that smallholders, women, youth, as well as those from marginalized communities are no longer on the periphery of food systems. Just how important is their participation in addressing the challenges of food insecurity that have been exacerbated by climate change?
It's important to note that most of the food that we consume is produced by women farmers, and despite the work that they do, they are not on par with their male counterparts who can be farmers as well, or who are entrepreneurs in the business. The technologies that we adopt, the policies that we adopt, they are not inclusive. They don't bring them into the mainstream agricultural business. So if women, we know that if you empower a woman in a village, you empower the whole village. Whereas when you empower one male, the tendency is for men to just keep it to themselves. We have seen how women have raised even the extended family children without denying themselves. So what we are saying is that they should be included as part of this economy. The youth as well, our farmers, we are faced with the aging farmer population. They do not see agriculture as what the discussions were saying as sexy. And one of the farmers says we should not say it's sexy, we should say it's profitable. In order for the youth to come into the sector, they have to see money coming through. And we are looking at empowering them, policies that will ensure that they are included throughout the agricultural value chain.
Now, if we look at international trade, that was one of the components in addressing food insecurity. How does international trade influence global food availability as well as access?
International trade is quite important in that, for example, in terms of South Africa, we are a much more export-oriented when it comes to agriculture. And what that means is that farmers are able to get the stronger currency for the produce that they get out of their farms. And even the country as a whole, we are able to balance our books due to the foreign exchange. And by the way, remember that food security, we say you are food secure when you are able to have a colorful plate for each and every meal. So if I'm a maize farmer and I get that foreign exchange, it means I will be able to buy protein, I'll be able to buy vegetables, etc., etc. So it's quite important, international trade. But I have to indicate that the ministers of agriculture, as we are preparing for their participation in September, will be in the Western Cape. They are talking about market access, not necessarily trade, because the issues of trade are dealt within the WTO, but what we are advocating for is an open system, transparent and predictable.
You know, let's look at the US trade wars for a moment, and perhaps also import bans in the continent. How can international trade be utilized? And what extent do tariffs and export restrictions impact global food prices and accessibility? You were mentioning now that your main focus is really around issues of access, while the World Trade Organization will look at issues of trade. But we were talking a bit earlier on around the decision that's recently been made by the Tanzanian government to ban the importation of all agricultural produce from South Africa as well as Malawi. How do restrictions of these, I guess, between the continental countries themselves, but also with international countries, how does that impact the global food prices and also accessibility to good quality and affordable food?
Let me just get to the statement by Tanzania. I've just read a piece from that was it's like a piece that was somebody within Tanzania. I don't know whether it was the minister of or the whoever the authority is. They were just
I think likely it's likely the Tanzanian Minister for Agriculture, Hussein Bashe.
Yes, but what it's just a talk. It's nothing that has been communicated to us as a country. Remember, we've got the National Plant Protection Organization, and for both countries, we have not actually. As South Africa, we have not received a formal communique that tells us that there is that ban. So for me to comment on that will be very much premature based on a statement that was said, I don't know in what forum and what the context was. But what I can tell you now is that our National Plant Protection Organization has not received that communique, but we are trying to engage. And I'm under the impression that something has been arranged for the two to meet to really understand what the issues are.
All right. Thank you very much for putting that into perspective for us. But it really does look in the wake of social media and access to information that sometimes the public tends to even have information before the official diplomatic corridors and channels have been followed.
That's the case. I have just seen a newspaper article actually being circulated, and for me, if anything, there has to be those formal communiques between the two NPPOs, so that we will be able to communicate to what the issue is. This for me, maybe I don't even want to downplay it as to, I don't even know what the occasion was when this was mentioned. I did see that little clip.
So in the light of these type of circumstances and others that predate these, how does that impact the global food prices as well as accessibility to food?
Obviously, if when there are restrictions put on a particular commodity, it creates an artificial shortage in the market, and it becomes expensive for the people who are going to buy, and it's a wastage for those who are supposed to supply. They have to go and find an alternate markets for those products. Agriculture is very tricky in that if you have planted an orange tree and the oranges are ripe and ready to go to a market, you cannot stop that orange from being ripe on the tree, otherwise it's going to be wastage. So that is the impact that it has. It means the farmer, if suddenly that market closes, diverting it to another market may take longer because there are SPS issues, sanitary and phytosanitary issues that have to be cleared before any country can accept the product from you. And it takes months of negotiations between the NPPOs or the recipient of the product.
So,
for the market to be opened. Sorry.
No, not a problem at all. Let's perhaps sum up with the solutions and some of the solutions that were presented at the G20 Agricultural Working Group on the challenges that were highlighted.
You know, at the moment, it's a process that we are engaged with. This was the second meeting of the agricultural deputies in preparation for the declaration that will be adopted by the ministers in September. We had the first meeting where we discussed our priorities in March. It was virtual. Now we're having a physical meeting. It's for the first physical meeting. In this meeting, we had round tables for each of the topics, so that the experts can just address the topic, the issues that we are raising. And from what we have taken responses from the member nations. Based on the responses, we are going to have what we call zero draft of the declaration. And that is the most critical document that is going to be discussed in preparation for the ministers, the policy direction that is going to be given by the ministers. And remember, the declaration, it's called a declaration if all the ministers of the 20 countries, now 21 with the African Union as a member of the G20, have agreed to the text. So it's still a long way to go to can say these are the decisions. We haven't decided as yet.
Well, thank you very much for putting us into context on the G20 Agriculture Working Group. This is the second meeting, so says the Deputy Director General for Economic Development, Trade and Marketing from the Department of Agriculture, Kwena Komape.
That was G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality and sustainability.